Sarah Mitchell pulled her carry-on bag down the narrow aisle of Flight 447, scanning the seat numbers above her head. The morning sun streamed through the small airplane windows as passengers settled in for the 3-hour journey from Denver to Phoenix. She found row 13 and paused, checking her boarding pass one more time. Seat 13F, right by the window, the middle-aged woman slipped into her seat, grateful for the window spot where she could watch the clouds and maybe catch some sleep. At 42, Sarah had grown tired of these business trips, but her job as a defense contractor consultant required constant travel. She pulled out her phone to send a quick text to her daughter before takeoff, her fingers moving across the screen with practiced ease. As other passengers filed past her, Sarah noticed the usual mix of travelers. Business people in suits, families heading to vacation destinations, and a few individuals who caught her attention more than others. 2 men in their 30s had boarded earlier, both carrying themselves with a certain confidence that reminded her of something from her past. They wore civilian clothes, but something about their posture and the way they scanned their surroundings seemed familiar. Sarah had learned to notice details like these during her 12 years in the Air Force, where attention to small things could mean the difference between life and death. Even though she had been out of service for 8 years now, old habits never really disappeared. She tucked her purse under the seat in front of her and adjusted her seatbelt, settling in for what she expected to be another routine flight. The flight attendants began their safety demonstration as the plane pushed back from the gate. Sarah half listened while looking out the window at the airport ground crew directing traffic on the tarmac. The familiar sight of aircraft maintenance vehicles and fuel trucks brought back memories she usually kept buried deep in her mind. Those were different days, when she wore a different uniform and answered to a different name. Flight 447 taxied toward the runway as the captain announced their departure. Sarah closed her eyes and tried to focus on the business meeting waiting for her in Phoenix. She needed to review the presentation one more time before landing, but the gentle rumble of the engines was already making her drowsy. The stress of recent months had been taking its toll, and she looked forward to getting this trip over with so she could return home to her quiet life in Colorado. As the plane lifted off the ground, Sarah felt the familiar sensation of gravity pulling her back into her seat. She opened her eyes and watched Denver grow smaller below them, the Rocky Mountains stretching endlessly toward the horizon. The sight always amazed her, even after all these years of flying. But today, something felt different about this particular flight. Though she could not quite put her finger on what it was, the 2 men she had noticed earlier were seated several rows ahead of her, occasionally glancing around the cabin in a way that suggested they were more than casual travelers. Sarah found herself studying them more closely, trying to understand why they seemed so familiar. Their haircuts were regulation short, and despite wearing civilian clothes, they moved with military precision when they got up to retrieve items from the overhead compartments, 20 minutes into the flight. As the plane reached cruising altitude, Sarah heard the captain's voice crackle over the intercom with an unusual announcement. Instead of the typical update about weather and arrival time, he informed passengers that they would be experiencing some turbulence and asked everyone to remain seated with their seatbelts fastened. But Sarah noticed something in his tone that other passengers probably missed. It was the controlled tension of someone dealing with more than just rough weather. She looked out her window and spotted something that made her heart skip a beat. 2 F-22 Raptor fighter jets were flying alongside their commercial aircraft, maintaining a steady formation just off their wing. The sleek, angular shapes of the military fighters were unmistakable against the clear blue sky. Sarah's breath caught in her throat as she realized this was no coincidence. Something serious was happening, and her peaceful business trip had suddenly become anything but routine. The other passengers seemed oblivious to the escort outside, chatting among themselves or reading magazines. But Sarah kept her eyes fixed on the F-22s, watching their precise movements and wondering what chain of events had led to this moment. She had spent enough time around military aircraft to know that fighter escorts for civilian flights only happened under very specific circumstances. none of which were good. Her mind raced through possibilities as she continued to watch the jets maintaining their protective formation. Terrorist threat, hijacking attempt, or perhaps some kind of security breach that required military intervention. Whatever was happening, Sarah knew her quiet morning flight had just become part of something much larger and potentially dangerous. She gripped the armrest a little tighter and prepared herself for whatever might come next, drawing on training and instincts she had hoped never to need again. The captain's voice returned to the intercom, this time with barely concealed urgency. He explained that air traffic control had requested they maintain their current altitude and heading until further notice. Sarah noticed the flight attendants, moving through the cabin with forced smiles, their trained professionalism masking obvious concern. She had seen that same expression on the faces of her fellow airmen during tense situations overseas. Sarah's phone buzzed with a text message, despite the airline's request to keep devices in airplane mode. The message was from an unknown number, but the content made her blood run cold. It simply read, "Echo 7, your country needs you again. Respond immediately." Echo 7 had been her call sign during her final tour of duty, something only a handful of people in the world would know. Her hands trembled slightly as she typed. Back, "Who is this?" The response came within seconds. "Captain Torres, 95th Fighter Squadron. We have a situation that requires your expertise. Look outside your window and flash your reading light 3 times if you can assist." Sarah's mind reeled as she recognized the name. Miguel Torres had been one of her students during advanced pilot training, a young lieutenant she had mentored in combat tactics and aerial reconnaissance. She peered out the window again at the F-22s maintaining their steady escort. The lead fighter was close enough that she could see the pilot's helmet through the cockpit glass. As she watched, the pilot raised his hand in a subtle gesture that she recognized immediately. It was the same hand signal she had taught her squadron for silent communication during radio blackouts. The pilot was trying to get her attention. Sarah's civilian life as a defense contractor suddenly felt like a thin disguise covering her true identity. For 8 years, she had worked hard to leave behind Captain Sarah Echo 7 Mitchell, one of the Air Force's most decorated reconnaissance pilots. She had flown dangerous missions over hostile territory, gathering intelligence that helped save countless lives. But a near-fatal crash during her final deployment had ended her flying career and sent her into early retirement. The reading light above her seat seemed to weigh 1,000 pounds as she reached for it. 3 quick flashes would signal her willingness to help, but it would also mean stepping back into a world she had fought so hard to leave behind. She thought about her daughter Emma, waiting at home for her to return from this business trip. She thought about the quiet life they had built together in Colorado, far from military bases and government secrets. But as she watched the F-22 pilots maintaining their protective formation around the civilian aircraft, Sarah knew she could not ignore their call for help. Whatever crisis was unfolding at 30,000 feet, they needed her specific skills and experience. She took a deep breath and flashed her reading light 3 times, then waited for a response. The lead F-22 pilot immediately waggled his wings in acknowledgement, then pointed toward the front of the commercial aircraft. Sarah understood the message. She needed to make her way to the cockpit to receive further instructions. But first, she had to figure out how to get past the flight attendants and explain her presence without causing panic among the other passengers. Sarah unbuckled her seatbelt and stood up, moving toward the front of the plane with the confidence of someone accustomed to command situations. One of the flight attendants immediately approached her, asking her to return to her seat due to the ongoing turbulence. Sarah leaned in close and spoke quietly. "I need to speak with your captain immediately. This is a matter of national security, and I am responding to a direct military request." The flight attendant's expression changed instantly from polite firmness to genuine concern. She had been trained to recognize potential security threats, but Sarah's calm demeanor and authoritative tone suggested something entirely different. After a brief hesitation, she led Sarah toward the cockpit, speaking quickly into her headset to alert the flight crew of the unusual request. As they approached the front of the aircraft, Sarah caught sight of the 2 men she had noticed earlier. They were both watching her movement with intense interest, their hands positioned near their jackets in a way that suggested concealed weapons. She realized they were likely air marshals, part of whatever security operation was currently in progress. One of them stood up as she passed, speaking quietly into a small radio device. The flight attendant knocked on the cockpit door using a specific pattern, then spoke the captain's name followed by a security code. The door opened to reveal a cramped space filled with blinking instruments and radio equipment. The captain turned to look at Sarah, his face showing a mixture of relief and apprehension. Behind him, the co-pilot was engaged in intense radio communication with what sounded like military air traffic control. Captain Williams, according to his name tag, gestured for Sarah to enter the cockpit. "Ma'am, we've been told you have special clearance to assist with our current situation. I have to admit, in 22 years of commercial flying, this is definitely a first." His voice carried the strain of someone dealing with circumstances far beyond normal. "Airline operations." Sarah nodded and moved closer to the radio equipment. "Captain, I need to establish direct communication with the F-22 pilots escorting us. Can you patch me through to their frequency?" As she spoke, she felt the familiar surge of adrenaline that had once driven her through the most dangerous missions of her military career. Whatever was happening today, Echo 7 was back in action. The radio crackled to life as Captain Williams adjusted the frequency to match the military channel. Sarah picked up the headset and spoke into the microphone with the crisp professionalism that had once defined her military career. "Falcon Leader, this is Echo 7. I understand you have a situation requiring my assistance." The response came immediately, filled with relief and urgency. "Echo 7, this is Captain Torres, callsign Falcon Leader. We have a code red situation developing over the Nevada test range. Intelligence indicates a foreign surveillance aircraft has penetrated restricted airspace and is attempting to photograph classified installations. We need your reconnaissance expertise to identify the threat and guide our response." Sarah felt her heart rate increase as the familiar rush of a high-stakes mission took hold. She had spent countless hours over the Nevada desert during her active duty, memorizing every landmark and classified facility in the region. Her specialty had been identifying enemy aircraft and predicting their likely targets, based on flight patterns and tactical positioning. "Falcon Leader, what type of aircraft are we dealing with, and what is its current position?" Sarah asked, already visualizing the terrain and potential threat scenarios. The Nevada test range contained some of America's most sensitive military installations, including experimental aircraft development facilities and nuclear testing sites. Torres responded quickly. "Unknown aircraft type, but radar signature suggests it's highly advanced and possibly stealth-capable. Current position is approximately 40 miles northwest of Area 51, flying at low altitude to avoid detection. It's been broadcasting on encrypted frequencies that our intelligence teams cannot break." Sarah closed her eyes and drew upon her extensive knowledge of foreign military aircraft and their capabilities. During her final years of service, she had specialized in identifying new threats from hostile nations developing their own stealth technology. The description Torres provided matched several possibilities, none of them good for American national security. "Falcon Leader, I need you to get me closer to the target area. Can you coordinate with air traffic control to reroute our civilian aircraft toward Nevada airspace?" Sarah knew she was asking for something highly unusual, but desperate situations called for creative solutions. Her expertise was useless if she could not observe the threat directly, the commercial airline. Captain looked at Sarah with a mixture of amazement and concern. "Ma'am, I'm not authorized to deviate from our flight plan without proper clearance from air traffic control. And frankly, I'm not sure my passengers signed up for a military reconnaissance mission when they bought their tickets to Phoenix." Sarah understood his reluctance, but she also knew that time was critical in situations like this. "Captain Williams, I need you to trust me on this. If that foreign aircraft succeeds in photographing our classified installations, it could compromise national security operations that protect millions of American lives. We have a narrow window to intercept and identify this threat." Torres's voice returned over the radio. Eco-7, we have authorization from NORAD to escort your aircraft into Nevada airspace. The situation has been elevated to the highest priority levels. We need your eyes on this target within the next 20 minutes, or we may lose our chance to prevent a major intelligence breach. Sarah felt the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders, just as it had during her most dangerous missions overseas. She turned to Captain Williams with the authority of someone accustomed to making life-or-death decisions under pressure. Captain, I am formally requesting that you follow the military escort's guidance. This operation has been authorized at the highest levels of government. The captain hesitated for a moment, then reached for his radio to contact air traffic control. ATC, this is Flight 447. We are requesting clearance to deviate from our current flight plan under military escort for national security purposes. The response came quickly, confirming that the deviation had been pre-approved and providing new coordinates for their modified route. As the commercial aircraft banked left toward Nevada, Sarah felt the familiar sensation of entering dangerous territory. She had flown countless reconnaissance missions during her military career, but this was the first time she would be conducting surveillance from the passenger section of a civilian airliner. The irony was not lost on her that Seat 13F had become an impromptu command center for a critical national security operation. Through the cockpit windows, she could see the F-22 escorts adjusting their formation to provide maximum protection for the commercial aircraft as they approached the restricted airspace. The Nevada desert stretched endlessly below them, its stark beauty hiding some of America's most closely guarded secrets. Sarah knew that somewhere in that vast wilderness, an enemy aircraft was attempting to steal information that could threaten everything she had spent her career protecting. The radio crackled again with Torres's voice. Echo 7, we are approaching the target area. Unknown aircraft is maintaining low altitude approximately 15 miles ahead of our current position. We need your assessment of its capabilities and likely mission parameters. Sarah gripped the microphone tighter, preparing to draw upon every bit of training and experience she had accumulated during 12 years of military service. As Flight 447 continued its unexpected detour into one of America's most restricted airspaces, Sarah realized that her quiet retirement had just come to an abrupt end. Echo 7 was back in action, and the skills that had once made her one of the Air Force's most valuable reconnaissance pilots were about to be put to the ultimate test. The next few minutes would determine whether a potential enemy succeeded in stealing America's most closely guarded secrets, or whether a chance encounter at 30,000 feet would prevent a major intelligence disaster. Sarah moved back through the aircraft cabin toward her window seat, her mind racing with tactical possibilities. The passengers around her remained largely unaware that their morning flight had become part of a high-stakes military operation. She needed to get visual contact with the target aircraft to provide the detailed assessment that Torres and his squadron required. Settling back into Seat 13F, Sarah pressed her face against the small window and began scanning the desert landscape below. Years of reconnaissance training had taught her how to spot aircraft against various backgrounds, and she knew the telltale signs that separated friendly aircraft from potential threats. The Nevada desert's unique terrain features served as reference points she could use to pinpoint the enemy aircraft's exact location. Her phone buzzed with another encrypted message from Torres. Echo 7. Target is now 12 miles northwest of your position, altitude approximately 500 feet above ground level. Aircraft appears to be following a systematic search pattern, likely photographing multiple installations in sequence. Sarah typed back quickly. Understood. I have visual scanning capability from current position. Maintain your distance until I can provide positive identification. Through her window, Sarah caught sight of a small speck moving against the brown and tan landscape of the desert floor. The aircraft was flying extremely low, hugging the terrain to avoid radar detection while systematically photographing sensitive installations. Its flight pattern suggested sophisticated mission planning and detailed knowledge of American defense installations. As the speck grew larger, Sarah began to make out specific details that confirmed her worst fears. The aircraft had the distinctive angular design of advanced stealth technology, with swept wings and a flattened fuselage designed to minimize radar reflection. But more concerning was its configuration, which matched intelligence reports of a new foreign surveillance platform that American forces had never encountered in actual operations. Sarah grabbed the cockpit radio again. "Falcon Leader, I have positive visual on the target. Aircraft appears to be a foreign stealth reconnaissance platform, possibly based on stolen American technology. Configuration suggests advanced electronic surveillance capabilities and long-range photography equipment. This is definitely not a civilian aircraft." Torres responded immediately. "Echo 7, that matches our intelligence assessments. Can you determine its likely country of origin and mission objectives?" Sarah studied the aircraft more closely, noting specific design elements that provided clues about its manufacturing source. The wing configuration and engine placement suggested technology from a nation known for aggressive intelligence gathering operations. "Falcon Leader, based on visible design elements, this appears to be from the same nation that has been conducting aggressive surveillance operations against our Pacific allies. The systematic flight pattern suggests they are targeting multiple classified installations for comprehensive intelligence gathering." Sarah paused, watching the aircraft execute a precise turn that demonstrated exceptional pilot skill and advanced navigation systems. The commercial airline captain's voice crackled over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are experiencing some additional air traffic in our vicinity that requires us to maintain our current altitude and heading for a few more minutes. Please remain seated with your seatbelts fastened." His calm professionalism helped maintain the illusion of a routine flight delay. Sarah continued her surveillance, noting that the enemy aircraft was approaching a particularly sensitive installation that housed experimental aircraft development programs. If the foreign surveillance platform succeeded in photographing that facility, it could compromise years of advanced research and development work. The implications for American national security would be devastating. "Falcon Leader, the target is approaching Installation Charlie 7. If they complete their photography run on that facility, we're looking at a major intelligence compromise. Recommend immediate intervention to prevent mission completion." Sarah's military training told her that decisive action was needed, but she also understood the delicate nature of intercepting foreign aircraft over American territory. Torres's response carried the weight of command decision-making. "Echo 7, we have authorization to intercept, but we need your assessment of the aircraft's likely response to our approach. Based on your reconnaissance experience, how do you think they will react to F-22 intervention?" This was the kind of tactical analysis that had made Sarah valuable during her active duty years. Sarah watched the enemy aircraft execute another precise maneuver, demonstrating the pilot's skill and the aircraft's advanced capabilities. "Falcon Leader, based on the pilot's demonstrated skill level and the aircraft's stealth configuration, they likely have contingency plans for discovery. Expect evasive maneuvers and possible attempts to flee toward international airspace. They may also have electronic countermeasures that could interfere with your targeting systems." The tension in the cockpit was palpable as Torres and his wingman prepared for the intercept mission. Sarah knew that the next few minutes would determine whether American forces could prevent a significant intelligence loss or whether the foreign aircraft would escape with photographs of some of the nation's most closely guarded secrets. From her window seat, Sarah had a front-row view of military operations that most civilians never witness. The F-22 escort fighters began adjusting their formation, preparing to engage an enemy aircraft that posed a direct threat to American national security. Her expertise as Echo 7 had transformed a routine business trip into a critical military mission, proving that some skills never truly fade even after retirement from active duty. As the intercept operation began to unfold, Sarah realized that her unique position as a reconnaissance expert aboard a civilian aircraft had provided American forces with a tactical advantage they could not have achieved any other way. The chance encounter in Seat 13F was about to determine the outcome of a high-stakes intelligence operation that could affect national security for years to come. The radio frequency erupted with controlled military chatter as Torres and his wingmen began their high-speed descent toward the enemy aircraft. Sarah watched through her window as the two F-22 Raptors peeled away from their escort formation, their powerful engines leaving contrails across the clear desert sky. The precision of their movements reminded her of the countless training exercises she had observed during her years at Nellis Air Force Base, Echo 7. "We are beginning our intercept run," Torres transmitted. "Continue providing reconnaissance updates on target behavior and any defensive measures." Sarah kept her eyes locked on the enemy aircraft, which had suddenly altered its methodical search pattern. The foreign pilot had obviously detected the approaching F-22s and was now taking evasive action. The enemy aircraft executed a sharp banking turn and dropped even lower, skimming just above the desert floor at dangerous altitude. Sarah recognized the maneuver as a desperate attempt to use terrain masking to avoid the F-22's advanced radar systems. "Falcon Leader, target is employing terrain-following protocols and has increased speed significantly. They are definitely aware of your presence and attempting to evade." From her unique vantage point, Sarah could see both the pursuing F-22s and the fleeing surveillance aircraft as they engaged in a deadly game of cat and mouse across the Nevada desert. The foreign pilot was skilled, using every available terrain feature to mask his aircraft's radar signature, while simultaneously heading toward the edge of restricted airspace. Torres's voice carried new urgency. "Echo 7. We need your assessment of the target's likely escape route. Based on their current heading and speed, where do you think they're trying to go?" Sarah quickly visualized the geography below them, drawing upon her extensive knowledge of the region's airspace boundaries and terrain features. "Falcon Leader, based on current trajectory, they appear to be heading for the northwestern corner of the restricted zone, probably attempting to reach international airspace over the Pacific. At their current speed and heading, they have approximately 8 minutes before crossing into unrestricted territory." Sarah's analysis was based on years of experience, tracking aircraft movements over this exact terrain. The commercial airline captain turned to Sarah with obvious concern. "Ma'am, I need to know if there's any danger to my passengers from this military operation. Should I be taking additional safety precautions?" His question reminded Sarah that she was not aboard a military aircraft with trained crew members, but rather a civilian flight with innocent passengers who had no idea of the drama unfolding around them. "Captain Williams, maintain current altitude and heading. The military aircraft are operating below us and your passengers are not in any direct danger. However, I recommend keeping them informed about minor delays without mentioning the specific nature of the operation." Sarah's response balanced honesty with the need to prevent panic among the civilian passengers. Through the radio, Sarah heard Torres coordinating with his wingmen as they closed the distance on the enemy aircraft. The F-22's superior speed and maneuverability were allowing them to gain ground despite the foreign pilot's evasive tactics. But Sarah also knew that once the enemy aircraft reached international airspace, the rules of engagement would change dramatically. "Falcon Leader, you have approximately 6 minutes before the target reaches the edge of restricted airspace. Recommend increasing intercept speed and attempting radio contact with the foreign aircraft." Sarah's tactical advice was based on standard operating procedures for dealing with unauthorized incursions into classified airspace. Torres acknowledged her recommendation and increased his approach speed. Sarah watched as the F-22s closed to within visual range of the enemy aircraft, their sleek forms cutting through the desert air with deadly precision. The foreign surveillance platform appeared to be a single-seat aircraft with advanced stealth characteristics, confirming intelligence reports about new threat capabilities. "Echo 7, we have established visual contact with the target. Aircraft configuration matches your assessment of foreign stealth reconnaissance platform. We are attempting radio contact on international emergency frequencies." Torres's report confirmed Sarah's identification. of the threat aircraft and its likely mission. Objectives: the enemy pilot's response to the F-22. Intercept was immediate and aggressive. The surveillance aircraft executed a series of violent, evasive maneuvers, including barrel rolls and sudden altitude changes that demonstrated both the pilot's skill and the aircraft's exceptional performance capabilities. Sarah realized they were dealing with a highly trained operator flying state-of-the-art equipment. Falcon leader, target pilot, appears to be military trained with extensive combat experience. Evasive maneuvers suggest advanced tactical knowledge and possible combat background. Recommend extreme caution in your approach. Sarah's warning was based on her recognition of specific flight patterns that indicated professional military training. As the chase continued across the Nevada desert, Sarah found herself reliving the intensity of her own combat missions. The adrenaline rush of high-stakes aerial operations came flooding back, along with the razor-sharp focus that had once made her one of the Air Force's most effective reconnaissance pilots. From Seat 13 AF of a commercial airliner, Echo 7 was once again directing military operations in defense of American national security. The radio crackled with Torres's urgent transmission. Echo 7. Target is approaching international airspace boundary. We need immediate guidance on rules of engagement if they cross into unrestricted territory. The question highlighted the delicate balance between national security and international law that governed military operations in contested airspace. Sarah realized that the next few minutes would determine not only the success of the intercept mission, but also the broader implications for American intelligence security. Her expertise as a reconnaissance pilot had provided crucial intelligence, but the ultimate outcome would depend on split-second decisions made by Torres and his wingman as they pursued a sophisticated enemy aircraft toward the edge of American airspace. Sarah gripped the radio microphone as she watched the F-22s close in on the enemy aircraft. The foreign pilot was making one final desperate run toward international airspace, pushing his advanced stealth platform to its maximum performance limits. Every second counted as American forces tried to prevent a major intelligence breach. Falcon leader, you have authorization to force the target aircraft to land at the nearest military installation, came a new voice over the radio. Sarah recognized the authority level of someone speaking from NORD Command Center. Use minimum necessary force, but do not allow that aircraft to escape with classified photography. Torres acknowledged the new orders and moved his F-22 into an aggressive intercept position directly in front of the enemy aircraft. His wingmen flanked from the right side, creating a tactical formation designed to force the foreign pilot into compliance. Sarah watched as the three aircraft engaged in a deadly aerial ballet at extremely low altitude over the Nevada desert. The enemy pilot's response was immediate and shocking. Instead of surrendering or attempting further evasion, the foreign aircraft suddenly climbed steeply and executed a complex maneuver that Sarah had never seen before. The stealth platform seemed to almost disappear from view for several seconds before reappearing at a different position, having somehow evaded both F-22s simultaneously. What the hell was that? Torres transmitted, his professional composure cracking slightly. Echo 7, did you see how they pulled that maneuver? I've never seen anything like it in 20 years of flying. Sarah stared out her window in amazement, trying to understand what she had just witnessed. Falcon leader, that appeared to be some form of advanced stealth technology that allows temporary visual concealment. The aircraft didn't actually disappear, but its stealth systems created an optical illusion that confused your targeting systems. Sarah's analysis drew upon her knowledge of experimental stealth technologies that were rumored to be in development by several foreign powers. The foreign aircraft was now less than 3 minutes from international airspace, and its pilot was clearly willing to use any advantage to complete his escape. Sarah realized that conventional intercept tactics might not be sufficient to stop this particular threat. The enemy had technology and capabilities that exceeded current American intelligence assessments. Falcon leader. Recommend coordinated approach using electronic countermeasures to disrupt their stealth systems. Force them to rely on visual flying only, which will limit their evasion capabilities. Sarah's tactical suggestion was based on her understanding that even the most advanced stealth systems had vulnerabilities that could be exploited by skilled pilots. Torres and his wingmen adjusted their formation and activated their F-22's electronic warfare systems. Sarah watched as the enemy aircraft's previously smooth flight pattern became erratic, suggesting that their electronic countermeasures were having the desired effect. The foreign pilot was now forced to fly manually without the assistance of his advanced navigation systems. Eco-7 electronic countermeasures are working. Target aircraft is showing signs of navigation difficulty and decreased maneuverability. Torres's report confirmed that American technology was proving superior to the enemy's stealth capabilities when properly applied, but the foreign pilot was not finished fighting. As the F-22s closed in for the final intercept, the enemy aircraft suddenly released what appeared to be a cloud of metallic chaff designed to confuse radar systems. At the same time, the pilot executed another steep climb followed by a diving turn that brought him dangerously close to the commercial airliner carrying Sarah. Evasive action. Sarah shouted into the radio as she watched the enemy aircraft streak past her window less than 100 feet away. The commercial airline captain immediately banked hard to the right, throwing passengers against their seats as Flight 447 maneuvered to avoid a mid-air collision. The near miss had an unexpected consequence. As the enemy aircraft passed close to the commercial airliner, Sarah caught sight of markings on its fuselage that had been invisible from a distance. The symbols and numerical designations confirmed not only the aircraft's country of origin, but also its specific military unit assignment. Falcon leader. I have positive identification of target aircraft unit markings. This is definitely a military intelligence platform from the nation we suspected, assigned to their elite reconnaissance squadron. The pilot is probably one of their most experienced operators. Sarah's identification provided crucial intelligence about the specific threat they were facing. Torres used this information to predict the enemy pilot's next move. Eco-7, based on your identification of their elite status, how do you think they'll respond to our final intercept attempt? Sarah drew upon her knowledge of foreign military tactics and pilot training programs to provide her assessment. Falcon leader, elite pilots are trained never to surrender sensitive aircraft to enemy forces. If cornered, they may attempt to destroy their own aircraft rather than allow it to be captured. Be prepared for extreme defensive measures. Sarah's warning carried the weight of hard-earned experience dealing with highly trained enemy pilots during her active duty. Years. The chase was now entering its final phase as all three aircraft approached the boundary of American airspace. Torres and his wingmen had one last chance to force the enemy aircraft to land before it reached the protection of international law. Sarah realized that her identification of the pilot's elite status might have just provided the tactical intelligence needed to successfully complete the intercept mission. As she watched the final moments of the aerial pursuit unfold outside her window, Sarah felt the satisfaction of knowing that her expertise as Eco-7 had contributed to protecting American national security. The chance encounter in Seat 13F had allowed her to provide crucial reconnaissance support that could determine the outcome of a high-stakes intelligence operation that would affect national security for years to come. The final confrontation unfolded with lightning speed as Torres positioned his F-22 directly in front of the enemy aircraft's escape route. His wingmen moved into flanking position, creating an inescapable tactical box that gave the foreign pilot only two choices: surrender or attempt to fight his way through two of America's most advanced fighter jets. Sarah watched in fascination as the enemy pilot made his decision. Instead of surrendering or attempting to ram through the F-22 formation, the foreign aircraft suddenly pitched upward into a vertical climb that seemed to defy the laws of physics. The stealth platform accelerated straight up at an impossible angle, its advanced engines screaming as they pushed the aircraft beyond normal performance limits. Eco 7, are you seeing this? Torres transmitted in amazement. That aircraft just pulled more Gs than should be possible for a reconnaissance platform? What kind of technology are we dealing with? Sarah stared out her window as the enemy aircraft continued its vertical climb, wondering if she was witnessing the first combat demonstration of revolutionary aerospace technology. Falcon Leader. That maneuver suggests the aircraft has capabilities far beyond normal reconnaissance platforms. It may be a prototype testing new propulsion systems or advanced flight control technology. Sarah's assessment was based on her knowledge that several foreign powers had been developing experimental aircraft with performance characteristics that exceeded conventional designs, but the enemy pilot's desperate gambit came with a price. The extreme vertical climb had consumed enormous amounts of fuel and pushed the aircraft systems to their breaking point. As Sarah watched, she noticed smoke beginning to trail from the enemy aircraft's engines, suggesting that the extreme maneuver had caused mechanical damage. Torres immediately recognized the tactical opportunity. Eco 7 target aircraft appears to be experiencing engine problems from their vertical escape attempt. They're losing altitude and speed rapidly. The F-22 pilot moved in for the final intercept. Knowing that the damaged enemy aircraft would no longer be able to evade capture, the foreign pilot fought to maintain control of his damaged aircraft. But the engine problems were becoming critical. Black smoke poured from the stealth platform's exhaust as it lost altitude over the Nevada desert. Sarah realized that the pilot now faced a choice between attempting an emergency landing or risking a catastrophic crash that could kill him and destroy the intelligence he had gathered. Falcon Leader. Recommend offering emergency assistance to the target aircraft. They appear to be in genuine distress, and forcing a crash could result in loss of valuable intelligence. Sarah's suggestion balanced tactical considerations with humanitarian concerns for the enemy. Pilot's safety. Torres made the decision to switch to international emergency frequency and contact the foreign pilot directly. Unknown aircraft. This is U.S. Air Force Falcon Leader. You are experiencing engine failure over restricted airspace. We are prepared to escort you to emergency landing facilities if you agree to immediate surrender. For several tense seconds, there was no response from the enemy aircraft. Then, speaking in accented but clear English, the foreign pilot replied, "American aircraft, I am declaring emergency and requesting assistance. My engines are failing and I cannot maintain altitude." The admission of defeat was clear in his voice. Sarah felt a mixture of relief and professional satisfaction as she watched Torres guide the damaged enemy aircraft toward a nearby military airfield. The intercept mission had succeeded in preventing the foreign surveillance platform from escaping with classified intelligence, while also capturing an advanced aircraft that would provide valuable information about enemy capabilities. Eco 7, this is Falcon Leader. Mission accomplished thanks to your reconnaissance expertise. The target aircraft is being escorted to Edwards Air Force Base for emergency landing and subsequent intelligence analysis. Torres's transmission carried genuine gratitude for Sarah's crucial contribution to the operations. Success. As Flight 447 resumed its course toward Phoenix, Sarah reflected on the extraordinary chain of events that had transformed her routine business trip into a critical national security operation. Her chance assignment to Seat 13F had provided American forces with the expertise needed to identify and intercept a sophisticated foreign threat. The commercial airline captain announced to passengers that their earlier delays had been resolved, and they would be arriving in Phoenix approximately 30 minutes behind schedule. None of the other passengers would ever know that they had participated in a high-stakes military operation that had prevented a significant intelligence breach. Sarah's phone buzzed with a final encrypted message from Torres. Echo 7. Official debriefing will be conducted after your aircraft lands. Your service today prevented potential compromise of multiple classified programs. Thank you for answering the call when your country needed you. The message reminded Sarah that even in retirement, her skills and experience remained valuable to national defense. As the aircraft descended toward Phoenix Sky Harbor Airport, Sarah looked out her window at the peaceful Arizona landscape and thought about her daughter Emma waiting at home in Colorado. The quiet life she had built as a defense contractor consultant would continue. But today had proven that Eco 7 would always be ready to serve when called upon. The irony was not lost on her that a simple business trip had become one of the most important missions of her career. Seat 13F had provided the perfect vantage point for a retired reconnaissance pilot to help protect the secrets that kept America safe. As Flight 447 touched down in Phoenix, Sarah smiled at the thought that sometimes the most critical operations happen in the most unexpected places, with the most unlikely participants answering their country's call to service.